Hello, everybody. Firstly, can I just check that you can hear me? Is that a yes? Excellent. And secondly, there are some seats up the front, particularly some vacated by the current panel. So if anybody is a little bit fed up of being down the back, you can make your way up while I'm giving my few words. So you're all very welcome to session 5 of today's conference, which includes a number of case studies, each of which is an exemplar of how the principles of good conservation can be applied through the prism of the new European Bauhaus in a way, maybe not in every case formally adopting those principles, but I think understanding what lies at the heart of them, in which those principles can be applied when adapting an existing building to new use. My name is Michael O'Boyle. I am the chair of the RIAI Historic Buildings Committee. The bad news is I have 12 very dense slides and 5 minutes to deliver them. The good news is I've distilled it down to this single piece of paper, so hopefully I won't detain you too long. The RIAI is the registration and representative body for architects in Ireland. The RIAI's mission is to inspire excellence in architecture to deliver a sustainable and resilient future for us all. And there are many different ways in which we do this, which I will skate over, but you can go and look at the RIAI website and you'll find out more about all of this. The RIAI is actively involved in promoting good practice in conservation and reuse, and the Historic Buildings Committee, the HBC, which I chair, and we have quite a few HBC members in the room, are, I suppose, a bunch of very committed specialists who contribute to developing the policy that then gets adopted by the RIAI. Education is very much at the heart of what we do. The RIAI Conservation Accreditation System runs annually, encouraging members to develop and progress their careers through 3 grades of conservation expertise, grade 3 being the entry level, working up to grade 1. The RIAI currently has 5,200 members, of which over 1,000 hold grade 3 accreditation, and then approximately 160 are at either grade 2 or grade 1. And we are very keen to get those numbers up because you'll see all these wonderful projects that are coming down the pipeline. We need the expertise, and we're determined to make sure that the expertise is available without impacting on the quality of our standards. The RIAI is at the forefront in research and policy development in the reuse of existing buildings. And there are many different ways that we do that, some of which are on the screen. But I'm going to highlight the publication and short film Old House, New Home as an example, which contains exemplars of conservation-led residential projects and existing buildings that don't need planning permission to get out of the ground are one very good and immediate way of dealing with the current housing crisis. Our members have a long history of research in the field of urban renewal and conservation. And again, we have some examples on the screen. I would highlight, just because it's very fresh in my head, the Irish Cities in Crisis publication there, which is a really detailed, forward-thinking review of how we should get ahead of the problem of how our cities should grow, based on compact urban density and compact urban development rather than our cities growing ever further outwards. It's an excellent research project. It's now accompanied by a book and a podcast series, which you can get, as they say, wherever you download your podcasts. But what I just came from an RIAI Council meeting this morning, and we got a presentation on it. It's now moved to the point of advocacy where the people behind this research project, are engaging with decision makers in cities like Limerick and Galway, and it gives me great hope for the future. The RIAI works closely with international and national bodies, including the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, the New European Bauhaus, the Architects' Council of Europe, amongst others. Town centre regeneration has been at the heart of all of our major conferences, and we hold several different conferences and large events each year. And town centre regeneration has been at the heart of those over the last 12 months, and probably a lot longer than that. We also host one-off lectures and CPD offerings which speak to this topic. The RIAI recognises and promotes excellence through our annual awards, which includes designated separate awards for conservation and adaptive reuse. I'm sure we have a couple of winners in the room, and those of us who were at the supper last night in the Irish Georgian Society, that is one of the previous winners. And also through the Silver Medal for Conservation, which is the most important award that we give in conservation. It's awarded every 3 years, and it allows times for projects to settle down. And our most recent winner was Safri Associates in Grania, who you've just heard from, for 14 Henrietta Street. RIAI engagement with local communities includes the RIAI Town Challenge Award as part of the annual National Tidy Towns competition. So this is outreach directly into local towns, villages and communities. And also through collaboration with different local authorities on town centre living competitions. And there are some examples of the winning schemes that you can see there. Finally, architects are uniquely placed not only to design individual buildings, but to understand places and create a repository of innovative urban design ideas. The RIAI short film Old Town New Place, which I think was showing when you were having lunch, highlights the work of architects in urban regeneration and placemaking in a variety of towns and villages. And I know, I think Charlotte Sheridan will be touching on that particular initiative in her concluding remarks. And that is me. Now, you don't get rid of me that easy because I am chairing. So we're going to move straight on. We have, as I said, a series of exemplar case studies. And I think what's particularly interesting about them is that they deal with building typologies that are in every city, every town, and every village, as you will see. Our first speakers are Colm Doyle and Lisa McVeigh of DMVF Architects. And they are going to be showing their work on the conversion of a bank in Rathmines with residential accommodation above, and then 30 Parnell Square, which will be a very typical Georgian terraced house. So Colm and Lisa, you have 20 minutes. It's up to you. Up to you how you divide it.
Less. Right, I will move quickly. Yeah, I've got it, Nikki, and I'm scared of you. So, hi everyone. Thank you to Nikki and to Emmeline and to everybody else for organising today. I am delighted. We are delighted to be here. I'm going to speak about the Belfast Bank, and Lisa will speak about our project in Parnell Square. So the Belfast Bank. How do I move this on? Is it this? Green arrow. Yeah, the Belfast Bank. This is the Belfast Bank, which was a purpose-built bank building. It's located in Rathmines and was completed in 1901 to the designs of Mr. Vincent Craig. The building is Scottish baronial in style. It's constructed primarily from brick with sandstone details, which include gargoyles, capping pieces, brackets, door surrounds, sills and bands. There's a castellated turret over the front door. There are strong gables in the elevations and enormous chimney stacks. The windows are primarily sliding sash with casement windows to the dormers. Is this working? Oh, yeah. The building was in office use when purchased by our clients, and it included the adjoining shop, the adjoining two-storey shop next door, which was built around 1907, we believe. And although the building was dated and underused, overall it was in reasonable condition and was watertight. This slide shows the 1882 and 1908 to 1909 Ordnance Survey maps, and between the drafting of these maps, Winfield Road has been laid out and the bank has been constructed. So the bank is inside the square there, and it's located at the junction of Winfield Road and Rathmines Road Lower. For those of you who know the area, this is Slattery's Pub, which is the other corner with Winfield Road and Rathmines Road, and our bank building is there. It fills its site, the building. On this diagram, we've tried to describe the different stages of the building. We consider the 1901 portion, or the original bank building, to be by far the most important building on the site. The 1907 two-storey shop to the side was added to the site, we think, in the 1980s. And the infill pieces to the rear are dated 1945 and 1980 and are of much lesser quality and much lesser importance. My clients purchased this building following visiting another project of ours, another bank conversion project of ours, which we were showing during the Open House Festival. And during this tour, they were struck by the economics of the project, where we described, as Graham was describing earlier, that much of the city centre building stock is valued for the ground floor portion only, and that the upper floors have a tiny value, or that's how the values are worked out commercially. I think they saw an opportunity when this building came on the market, and they wondered if we could, if they bought it, if we could create something more impressive on the upper floors. Just to run through the plans very briefly. A restaurant seemed like an obvious use for the ground floor. The banking hall and adjoining shop would accommodate a dining room well. Kitchens and bathrooms are located to the much less important 20th century or later 20th century areas of the building to the rear. And the restaurant in total measures about 230 square metres. We wanted to increase engagement with Winfield Road, and we wanted increased visual and physical permeability between the building and Winfield Road and the pub across the road. We felt that would help the restaurant to work and to be successful. The existing main entrance to the bank is under the turret here in the corner of the blue arrow, and it's really delightful and a very pleasant way to enter the building, but it does incorporate a couple of steps. So we managed to create universal access for the restaurant through a new opening at the side of the 1907 shop. The entrance to the apartments above are through an existing door on the side elevation, and this was the original door to the bank manager's apartment, which was located above the bank, and we were keen to retain and reuse this. Bikes and bins for the apartments are located in the 1980s extension, which was easy to modify. On the upper floors, we created 3 large, generous and well laid out apartments. Each apartment has 2 bedrooms, a utility room, a study, 2 bathrooms and a walk-in wardrobe. Also, each apartment has a roof garden. The roof gardens for these 2 apartments are located on the flat roof of the 1945 extension, which we rebuilt. On the top floor, we removed the pitched roof of the 1907 two-storey shop to the side of the bank, and we put in a flat roof here to create an adjoining roof garden. And we created 2 new openings in the gable. For the entire scheme to work, it was, I guess, most important that the adaptation and reuse of the ground floor was successful. So this sketch was a drawing that we put together to imagine the possible engagement between the proposed restaurant and the existing, and I guess some maybe imagined uses on Winfield Road. Winfield Road being much quieter than the very, very busy Rathmines Road around the corner. So one thing we thought was important was to look at dropping the windowsills. I guess in the original bank, having high walls and security was quite important, and it was somewhat about keeping people out, whereas we wanted to try and open up this elevation. On the Rathmines Road elevation, we retained a 1/1 format and dropped the existing sill. Shane helped us with this chore. You might see a photo of Shane in a moment. On the Winfield Road around the corner, we put in French windows, opening in French windows, so that we could have them open and that you might feel like you're dining outside, and that you'd, I guess, again, greater engagement between those maybe having a drink outside the pub and those having a bite to eat inside the restaurant. So on the left here, you can see the bank as we found it. You can also note the rendered band below the windows. In the middle is the works underway, and on the right-hand side are the dropped windowsills with the restaurant in use. So you can see the diners sitting inside. Here is some of the step-by-step about how we dropped those carefully. Dropped those windowsills, and when I say we, I mean Shane. So,
Shane, he means my team.
Yeah, well, so thank you for that team. Thank you for that team, and thank you for that, Shane. But in the first photo, you can see one sill dropped and one yet to be dropped. The temporary works in the second photo, and then the new brick specials that we made in the bottom left-hand photo, and the original windowsills dropped to that lower level. The bottom right-hand photo is still during construction, but you can see those new French doors open so that you're getting a better sense of the street outside and, as I say, of Slattery's pub across the road. This is the finished product and the bank open, the principal entrance there under the turret. Some of the interior photos, you can see the interior of the restaurant. They did their own fit out, and some of the apartment interiors here. The original bank manager staircase, or the staircase in the bank manager's apartment, is retained. Much of the glazing is retained, or the glazing is retained. This is the Rathmines Road elevation. And on this elevation, I guess you can see the dropped windowsills into the main restaurant, the new shop front onto the 1907 addition, the level access or the universal access there on the left-hand side, and there's a roof garden. You can see the two new gable doors and windows onto the roof garden above. I guess at the end of the project, we consider that the apportioned value has flipped. We've turned this model on its head. So we think we're now getting, in terms of property values, we're now getting 60 to 70% of the overall property value from the upper floors, and something like 30 to 40% on the floors below, which makes for a good argument for doing something like this. So that's me. Thank you so much. What's that?
We're still friends.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't be distracted of Nicky.
Okay, I stole some minutes from Colm, so I better get stuck in. So I just want to really quickly say thank you to Nicky and Emmeline, and I also want to say thank you to Graham Hickey, Dublin Civic Trust, because Graham, where are you? He actually has championed Parnell Square, number 30 Parnell Square, when we were finishing it, and he brought it to Nicky's attention as well, I think. So thank you to that. I just had to throw that in really quickly. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the first slide. Okay, so for those here that are not local, really quickly, a brief history. Parnell Square is the first of Dublin's squares, built in between 1753 and 1785. It was originally known as New Gardens, and then Rutland Square in 1792 before it became Parnell Square. Number 30 is on the west side. Oops, that went. Oh, I must have been flicking this, was I? Oh, that's fine. That's back to where I needed to be. Sorry about that. Number 30 is on the west side of the square, built by Patrick Kent, a merchant in 1765. What's important here is to have a look at this diagram on the left, which shows a typical lot of a Georgian townhouse, which shows at the bottom of the page the entrance into the main house in the blue, and if there was a rear return, the rear return was connected to the house into the formal gardens, and then the coach house of the Mews, and then the stable yard. The two buildings, are the two photos at the bottom, show how the client, the INTO, bought it in 2012, and the NTO actually own about 6 or 7 houses on that stretch, so they were quite familiar with them. So they bought it, and it was very, very little minor changes to the front elevation, but at the back there's quite significant alterations to the rear. So I'll just bring you through those now. So we have. You can see that what the lot, or we call it the site, as we refer to it now, has significantly changed to the back from the first slide. Sadly, the relationship. I don't know if I'm flicking this or something. I don't know. Okay, sorry. The relationship between the coach house and the main house, they're no longer in the same ownership for them, and the site has extended an L shape along the back of the lots to the houses to the north to have a vehicle entrance from Granby Lane. Also this that was the selling point, but also the extension to the rear was built in 1950s. I think we'll all agree that the ghastly extension was built. Apologies if the architect's here. So, but it was. It was a selling point for the client because of the additional floor space and an area that you can use for smaller spaces. So when they approached me and DMVF, they thought this was a doer-upper and would just put a new roof on and a few new windows and we'll get on with it. So I had a look at that, and this diagram shows the impact of the extension it was having on the site and the building. The orange is the new extension, 1950s extension. The blue is the historic building. You can see that the visual relationship between the main house and the Mews and the coach house is no longer there because of the obstruction at the back of the house on so many floors. It has it changed the proportions. The extension has changed proportions of the back rooms. It also reduced the light getting into these rooms and into the stairwell too. So it's really dark and peculiar in those rooms in an odd proportion. And also the extension was pulling at the back of the main house of the historic fabric. So I'm not going to dwell on these at all, but just really quickly, if you can see that it gives you an insight into the condition of the building when we find it. There's this odd photo here where it shows the extension floor cutting right across one of the arches to the back. It was really bizarre. Services were surface mounted. They were surface mounted, but they were still cutting through the woodwork, the historic woodwork. So we had to carefully take those off. There's a lift located, so it's on the right hand side at the bottom. There's a lift that the clients wanted to keep. We wanted to remove it because it was right in the centre of the hallway, but for obvious reasons they wanted to keep the lift to be able to move throughout this building. So, but it was quite upsetting as well. Then just more photographs showing the same things. The things like the shutter boxes were damaging the lath and plaster ceilings, and they were starting to laminate. The floorboards surfaces had been cut into the floorboards. We lifted one very carefully to have a look, and we could see what was going on. So it was in really dark condition. So DMVF had a look at what we wanted to do here. So our proposal, I'm going to bring you through our initial concepts. It was to remove the extension for the reasons that I just went through, and it was also very badly constructed, and to adapt and reuse the remaining main house and historic structure for the client's brief. I'm going to explain now over these next few slides, but I think you can see that the orange obviously is the new build, and you can see where it sits on the site in relationship to the building. So this to keep bringing you through these initial concepts, we removed the 1950s extension to the rear, and we inserted this contemporary black box. And what I think is important here, I just want to get across, is that the clients, and to justify this to the clients and the NTO, they really wanted to keep that floor area that they had when they bought the house. So I proposed that we would keep the same floor area, but we would put it into a design that had the same footprint of a typical return to a period townhouse like this, but would still have that floor area. Oh, right, okay. So we have, so you can see from the axonometric here that, sorry, I'm going to jump. Okay. Yeah, okay. So let me go back. Sorry, this is the main part. So we also wanted to integrate a glass link. The glass link would prevent the building from crashing in, the extension crashing into the back of the building and create all of those awkward junctions to have to get around on the back of a main house. So, and most importantly, would allow light back into the building and back into the stairwell. I want to show you these because we relimed the back of the building. Shane relimed the back of the building, and you can see that. The modern interventions were still done in lime, but in a different surface to show those. This is a picture showing the back of the main house and the other one. So, then we have the extension also helped us to improve universal access within the new extension. We have this image shows the ramped access that you don't get to for the front steps. Then this shows the new platform lift's just tucked in here. We have a photograph of the platform lift, so it's just tucked in here to the left, and then we have the glass links. I think served as an entrance to the main house, and we also were able to put ambient disabled facilities into the smaller spaces. The extension. This one is. I do want to tell you about this one though. This is the lift. So with the lift, we couldn't get rid of it, so we upgraded it by using a mirrored surface that I think successfully reflects the historic features throughout the building, makes a much lighter space. So this one, I'm going back. Here we are. Sorry, I'm not following. I'm watching this. So, and then this slide just shows the relationship coming back between the main house and the Mews house and the coach house. And I actually extended a cantilever over the shown in that section again to get that floor area, but it's got a glass wraparound, so you can actually, when you're in the house, you can look through the glass wraparound and still see the coach house from the different floors. Okay, I just want to go run through a few of these interventions which we're really pleased with. This, you can see there's these arches we had this cut through. We obviously carefully removed that. This was the area though is going to be the glass link, so we weren't going to reinstate the windows, but instead we wrapped them with a modern material to show that modern intervention, which I'm quite pleased with. And then we have areas like handrails that we lost, they didn't survive, but it was in the area where I don't think I'm doing anything. It just keeps jumping. So it was in the area where there was the connection between the old and the new. So we've got Shane once again. We pulled him in for so many things. So we restored the granite steps, and then you can see the new surface, and then you can see the relationship between the new handrail and the historic handrail. I'm not going to talk for hours, obviously, about this reception room at the front, but there's a story behind that. But I just want to show that Shane restored the tiles after we found them under an asbestos floor, and then we also decided the fireplace, the chimney piece, I should say, did not survive. So DMVF designed the fireplace, the chimney piece, and then Shane made it with Portland stone to echo the Portland stone in the lobby. We actually I calculated using the section where the flues were coming through the building, and we used them for cables, for low voltage cables, instead of having to chase or that. And we also used the routes where we could. Fireproofing, I'm not going to get into that. The staircase, Shane, once again, we lifted the asbestos covering, and he helped us restore these and bring them up to a standard to be acceptable Part M. We also find these, I think these are really interesting, we find these openings here. I can only imagine it was from the guys upstairs to keep an eye on the guys downstairs. It's between the upper ground floor and the basement. And then we also, actually just here, we actually kept this, we fireproofed this. And the steps are in there, you just don't use them, but it shows you their historic layout. Okay, I think I'm nearly there. So this is just a handrail, but again, we opened this up. We carefully opened it up. It didn't meet regs, so we carefully wrapped it in a modern intervention, which we can reverse later on quite easily. And then I'm not going to dwell on this. Just a shout out to. Who cares about pointing? Who cares about pointing? So you can see Shane. Shane worked. That's myself and Shane on the scaffolding, looking at the feathered reveals, and then we have the lamstone. Looked after we went from that to that with the lamstone for the sash windows, and then the railings, Bushy Park, layers and layers and layers of paint, and came back. This is actually lead work in the curved pieces there, and you can also see a graph from Shane on the stone just there too. Lastly, last slide. the stabilization of the ceilings. So they were delaminated, so we carefully tied those back. And that's what it was and what it is now. That's me. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Colm and Lisa. I want to live in one of Colm's apartments, and I want to work in Lisa's building on Parnell Square. Sadly, that's not an option, but what... for me and most conservation architects and people working in the field, we do get to work with very experienced and skilled tradespeople, and conservation work is the interface between the correct application of the technology and the use of philosophy that underpins the decision making. And our next presentation speaks to that point. So we have Audrey Farrell, who's Senior Architect in the OPW, and Shane Nolan, who I feel needs no introduction, Managing Director of Nolan's Group Conservation and Restoration. And they are bringing us to the Phoenix Park to talk about the magazine fort. And they are going to do that in 25 minutes. Up to you.
Michael, will you? Left. Cool. Okay, so I'd also just like to thank for the opportunity to speak today on this project, and Shane and I are going to speak on the stabilisation and restoration works to the magazine fort, a significant historic military site within the Phoenix Park in Dublin, overlooking the Liffey. The presentation will cover the history of the fort, the conservation works, and the Duke of Dorset reconstruction, research and design, and then I'll hand over to Shane, who's going to talk about the traditional building skills of the Duke of Dorset gate reconstruction, and then other elements. So key members of the design team also included structural engineers Liam Keogh from Downs Associates, and archaeologist Archaeology Plan, and ecology Pat Moran from Fairs. The main contractor was Kelbuilt Heritage, with specialists including Nolan's Group, Crano Roofing, Lamb's Tongue and Bushy Park Ironworks. So the magazine fort was built in the Phoenix Park between 1734 and 1736 by the then Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, the Duke of Dorset, for the purpose of storing and supplying gunpowder and ammunition to the British government forces. It was designed by military engineer John Parnell in a typical square plan with 4 demi-bastions and a dry moat. This is a mid-18th century panoramic view of Dublin by James Mason after Joseph Tudor, looking east from the magazine fort up in the top left-hand corner in the Phoenix Park, which shows its prominence over the River Liffey. The restoration of the fort enhances the Phoenix Park's cultural landscape, positioned within the military landscape of the Liffey Valley, in close proximity to the Royal Hospital Kilmainham, visible here as well up in the top right, Collins Barracks, and the Irish National War Memorial Gardens to the south, and McVeigh Barracks, Arbour Hill and Grange Gorman military cemeteries to the east and north. This is the first phase of works to open the fort fully to the public as an amenity in this area of the park. As warfare was changing, it was necessary to adapt the fort to new technologies and weaponry and to improve its defensive nature. Between 1793 and 1801, a series of alterations were done, including widening the ramparts at the bastions to accommodate gun platforms and 4 corner cavaliers, and also the parapet was raised and a stepped walkway was added. In 1801, a ravelin, a corner outer defence, was to the right-hand side here, was added to provide accommodation for officers and soldiers and their families, to designs by Francis Johnson. The magazine fort was occupied by British Armed Forces until 1922, when it was handed over to the Irish Army. And the Irish Defence Forces continued to operate the site as an ammunition store throughout the mid-20th century, managing the fort until 1988, when it was decommissioned and transferred to the OPW. The fort is a recorded monument and a protected structure. The works carried out over 2 years focused on the restoration the structural repairs and new lime rendering of the rampart walls and 3 Cavalier buildings, conservation works to the exterior of the magazine building, this large one here, reconstruction of the Duke of Dorset Gate, repointing of the blast wall, and localised roof repairs to other ancillary buildings. The rampart walls are the thick, stone-clad earthen walls surrounding the fort, built to protect it from attacks by helping to absorb shock of gunfire and deflecting cannonballs. In the early 20th century, the upper section of these walls were rendered with a cement, and the walkway area steps repointed using cement mortar. Over time, ground subsidence, because this is all made up ground, caused the steps to sink and separate from the walls, and the granite slabs and limestone risers to dislodge. There were also large cracks in the perimeter ramparts to be addressed, and sections of the wall in poor condition. So we carried out excavation works under archaeological supervision to remove topsoil and fill. This revealed concealed features such as additional stone platforms, masonry remains of walls and drains around the Cavaliers, and covered walls of the 1730s fort. This is a sketch done by archaeologist Neil Fitzpatrick of features uncovered in the southeast bastion, where we can see a sentry platform and a flagpole base. Metal detection was used for archaeology in all areas before groundworks could begin. And in this process, the archaeologists found some interesting artefacts and health and safety aspects, which included detonators, coins, bullets, spent and live, and fragments of hand grenades, and an Irish Republican Brotherhood uniform button. These are all believed to have been from various raids in the fort, notably in 1916 and 1939. And we also had the bomb squad out, but that's another story. To stabilise the rampart wall steps, the grounds below were required to be consolidated to provide a stable, levelled surface. So a stone blanket was formed over a geotextile membrane with a geocrid reinforcement and compacted crushed rock. This required the numbering, dismantling and setting aside for reinstatement of the stones of the steps and the gun and sentry platforms, which you can see there, and all the careful marking out that was done by Shane and his team. Here are 2 images of the works carried out to the rampart walls, showing the removal of loose sand and cement render, and raking out of friable and cement pointing. The dismantling of the section of the parapet wall required rebuilding and crack stitching. I'd note here from earlier about a conversation about materials bank. Well, the OPW's been doing that for a long time now regarding our historic structures. So when stone and brick and other elements are taken down from other projects that are not able to be reused, they're banked, and then here, this is where some of that stone and brick got reused in these repairs. The internal and external walls above the string course were re-rendered and finished with a lime harling render, and the gun platforms embrasures were reopened and new railings installed using the original hinge pins that were still on the outside of the walls. And here you have a before. So there was 800 linear metres, a half a mile of rendering to cover both sides of the walls. And here you can see that finished flagpole from the earlier sketch. And then this is the southwest corner before and after. So the magazine gunpowder store building is the earliest building on the site. It comprises of 3 parallel vaults, the outer vaults in C, dating from 1736, and a central shorter vault B added in 1758, and brick porches were added in the late 19th century. The design and the materiality of these barrel vaulted structures are of thick brick and stone walls, reinforced with the buttresses. They were still figuring out engineering then, and with solid pitched roofs, ensuring that they were damp-proof, fireproof and attack-proof. Cross ventilation was provided at 3 levels by a combination of the large gable windows and then small intramural ventilation shafts and underfloor vents, because it was very important to keep that gunpowder dry. The works to the magazine building were in essence the removal of later interventions, such as the impervious materials of cement pointing and renders, and the reinstatement of missing elements, such as the windows, all to make the building watertight. Where granite capping stones and leadwork had been taken off the roof and rainwater goods were missing, these were reinstated, and the roof was recovered in natural slate, both salvaged from the building and new. Following careful removal of the cement pebble dash render, the walls were repointed with a natural hydronic lime mortar and rendered in a lime harl. And structural repairs included mechanical grout sock anchor connections and stainless steel reinforcing bars for crack stitching. So this is an example of innovative technology with traditional skills. The east facade of the magazine building is the only one unrendered. It is of dressed cap limestone and surprisingly found to be finished in wigging pointing. So we found remnants of original wigging in a few locations and on all 3 vaults, and they were retained in situ and served as the samples to replicate. So there you have it being carried out, and the one on the left-hand side is a sample of marine in with the remaining in situ wigging. So there's the east facade upon the finished of the restoration works, and then before of the rear and after of the rear. So the Duke of Dorset gate. So the magazine fort's original entrance, known as the Duke of Dorset Gate, was the original formal and only entrance to the magazine fort. It was partially dismantled in the early 1970s by the Irish Defence Forces to allow entry of Army Signal Corps vehicles. During this period, secret operations were carried out to adapt the fort to new communication and information systems, which resulted, among other things, in crude alterations to the North Magazine vault and the removal of the central portion of the gateway, leaving only the piers in place. So here's the letter from the Department of Defence on the right, explaining the reason why the archway had to be dismantled, as I just mentioned. It must have been very important communications. And next to it, an image of the Duke of Dorset Gate before this had happened. This is a photo of a bride and her father, no husband, Mr. Larry Cunningham, caretaker at the magazine fort, walking his daughter Margaret Peggy Cunningham McCann on her wedding day in 1969. So, some key stones from the arch were found within the fort, not as many as we'd hoped, but instrumental. The moulded lintel and the arch tympanum, a few voussoirs, including the 2 springers, and 2 engraved Portland stones. The keystone has the date 1736 carved in Roman numerals, and the dedication stone bears a Latin inscription indicating that it was constructed during the reign of George II by Lord Lieutenant Lionel Sackville, Duke of Dorset. Okay. Surprisingly, upon research across various archives, including the Irish Nuclear Military, there was no drawing or photographic record of the gateway. So based on the wedding photo and a few remaining original stones and the stone pillars, we established the reconstruction drawings. By remeasuring the remaining stones, this assisted with determining scale, and the pillar informed our stone profiles, which helped to create stone drawings. Here, shaded in grey, is the existing granite stones that were reused, and in yellow, the 2 reinstated Portland stones. And this is an example of the stone schedule here. And I suppose these are all to help the contractor get an idea, but it still doesn't, channel say about we did it. So here we have the outcome, the reinstated gateway. The Duke of Dorset Gate is a brick and cab limestone structure dressed in ashlar granite, sitting on an ashlar limestone base. In this front elevation, the central portion of the archway and the rusticated piers project slightly. And the whole arrangement is topped by an entablature and a triangular pediment. In contrast to the back of the archway, which is simple and is a single plane finished with Harley render. So Shane is going to talk more about this in a minute, but just before, when Shane's making his way up, I'm just going to note, in the spirit of NEB or NIB, is some outreach that we would have done, which included public outreach during Heritage Week and Open House, and professional outreach that we did to share knowledge and upskilling of professionals, both in-house in the OPW and with wider stakeholders. And also with an idea of trying to encourage younger people into construction, and especially girls. We did outreach with schools and for STEM and traditional skills. This project had female architects, archaeologists, and a junior contractor project manager. So I'm going to hand over to Shane, and I'll just mention there was great collaboration on this project between the client, the design team, and the contractor and the specialist.
For sure. Yeah, so Nikki and Emily, thanks a million. The quality of today is second to none, and we were involved in some of them projects, which we're very grateful for. So the magazine Fort, Audrey's gone through kind of the outline of what the project was, but I want to just look at it slightly different, but from a traditional skills point of view, and how important a project like this is for traditional skills. So I'll start off with the arch. You'd think if you were asked to reconstruct an arch, you could make up your profile, cut the stone, and just fit it in. But no, of course, it wouldn't be that easy. So one of the first jobs we had to do was to put the existing stone that we had, put that back together into position. And that's where Liam, the engineer from Downs Associates, came in. I always judge an engineer by the volume of steel he specs. The less steel he has, the better, the happier I am. Because it means he's understood the construction of the building and what he has to do on a low-level intervention to give us what we wanted. So anyway, when we're presented an arch like this and a wedding picture, you can imagine our reaction. But a massive amount of work went in between Audrey and Angela down there and Gavin and our team to come up with a strategy that's going to work here. Because what we had is we had two pillars, one twisted left, one twisted right, one falling out and one falling in. So try and do the calculation and the maths on that to cut in stone like the way we did. So what we ended up doing was we kind of over-calculated our stone, and when we got there, so instead of anything being level, we had everything even, if that makes sense. So this is just the guys again, just to hone in on traditional skills. We've really good quality masons here, but why is this arch more special than any other arch? It's because of the intricacies we had in it. So the learnings that we would gain out of an arch like this, you're never going to do it again. It's a once in a lifetime project for us as contractors. So again, that's just the arch being fitted in, all the different levels of stone and kind of the different challenges that came along the way. But the guys couldn't have been happier to work on such a project like this. You know, in terms of traditional skills, you can see the level of the carving of the stonework, how we fitted in the arch. You'll actually see where we detailed some of the flaws that we would have had to deal with in the arch. So that's how we made them disappear within the arch. Again, as I said, it's everything's even, nothing's level. This is the final stages of it going on, and the lead work, again, with traditional skills in lead work, the volume of lead that went on this, the size, the containment of it, hugely important to the project. That's the rear of it, which we harled in the end. This is Gav. He was the head mason on the project. He's bursting with pride, but he'll never tell you that. But he's delighted with himself. He's delighted with how it's turned out, and he's delighted how it's progressed him as an individual on a traditional skills project. So there was many other different skill sets. I said there was a kilometre. You said a half a mile. Was it? We won't argue over it. But when you have a project of this scale, that is a kilometre of stonework to be put in, a kilometre of brickwork to be repointed, a kilometre of stonework, cappings. By the time you've started the project and you end the project, no matter what your skill set is, you've learned a hell of a lot, and that just carries forward. So not only are we looking at a structure that looks amazing and has been restored to such a fine quality, the learnings that as contractors that we have taken out of it is massive for the industry, for Ireland in general, from a traditional skills point of view. All the projects that were mentioned and discussed today, none of them would be possible without traditional skills. So we need to hone in on that. There's a lot of work being done on traditional skills. There's a lot more to do, but we're a lot better. We're in a lot better place now than we were in previous years. These are just other images of the guys. These are the people that make all this work, and they're the ones that need the recognition. So you can see kind of the length of the walls, the amount of harling, the amount of plaster. Look, you don't get much happier than that now, do you? Yeah. You probably pose for that, but not sure. So Audrey mentioned that we found wig pointing on the stonework, which is extremely unusual, again, for traditional skills. We're used to wig pointing on brickwork. We do vast amount of it. So for Brendan here, Brendan is with us for 25 plus years, never did wig pointing on stonework. So he's come out the other side of this with upskilling himself from brickwork back into stonework, and it's exceptional. It's beautiful. It formalises the stonework. It's really, really, really nice. So again, just there's other skills. We had crannog roofing on the roof. We had lamstung on the windows. Again, lamstung maybe. They'd be working a lot more on kind of sash windows. They got to work on different types of windows here, which is good as well. The tin roof, I don't think you get to replace and restore a tin roof every day of the week. So again, it was just another skill. And the same as well with lamstung doing the steel windows, the lovely detail on it. It's not something they would have worked on every day. We had Bush Park Ironworks on the railings, on the railings going up the steps, which were removed to stabilise the sections. So it doesn't look like a CGI picture, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's the team all in place there. So just to say as well that we have a design team here, and I know Audrey's mentioned them, and I won't mention them again. You can read down them, but look, they're all cogs in a system that makes this project work, and it's the reason why this project is successful. But every project gets finished, but the team determines the legacy it leaves, and I think we have left a good legacy behind us here, and that's down to the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we've gained 2 minutes there, which is fantastic news. We've seen a very large project, a kilometre, possibly a half mile, who's counting, of render and pointing. We now move to a different scale, but a building typology no less ubiquitous in our towns and cities than the humble Mews building, albeit this one is attached to St. Patrick's Cathedral. So we're going to hand straight over to Fionnuala Hayes of Howley Hayes Cooney Architects, and Fionnuala's going to tell us all about her work there. So 20 minutes, Fionnuala.
Checking my arrows here. The green on that one, yeah? On the clicker. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about a very small building, a very modest building. But it is an interesting story about how a small neglected service building has been brought into the heart of the cathedral community at St. Patrick's. Better show it, hadn't I? Ah, there we go.
That's forward and that's back.
That's forward and that's back. Thank you,
there's an
Emily.
integrated pointer there as well.
Okay. It's a modest two-storey traditional news building serving the Deanery of the Cathedral. And although this structure was built around 1870, there has been a building on this site since the medieval period. The Deanery and its curtilage are a recorded monument, protected structure as well. To set the context, this image shows the historic cathedral precinct, looking at it from the southeast. The Deanery stands at the southern edge with the Mews to the west. Outlined there in red is the scope of our project. The cathedral to the north, and beyond that is St. Patrick's Park. And you can see Marsh's Library and the former Bishop's Palace of St. Sepulchre to the east. On the west of the Mews is St. Patrick's Grammar School and the Choir School, which the latter was founded in the 15th century. A series of maps here to show the medieval cathedral precinct first appearing on the speed map of 1610. That's up in the top left. You can see the little red marker. 150 years later, Roke shows the site in more detail, with closes running to the north and south of the cathedral, and a narrow lane called Mitre Alley running from Kevin Street to connect to the south close. At this time, the gardens of the Deanery, the Palace of St. Sepulchre and the graveyard, they merged into one large green area between the cathedral and the Deanery. Now, during the restoration of the cathedral by Benjamin Lee Guinness in the 1860s, the close was extended through the gardens of the Deanery and the palace to connect with Kevin Street. That lopped off a lot of the Dean's Garden, we may not have been too happy about, but to compensate for this loss, some small houses were demolished on the west onto Mitre Alley, and the Deanery Garden was extended to the west, directly north of the Mews, and this is an area that our project extended into. Benjamin Lee's son, the first Lord Ivy, later cleared away slums to the north of the cathedral to create the park. And at the end then you see the OS map of the site as when we started our project. Our practice has been involved with the Deanery Mews for more than 15 years, and my partner James Howley is the current cathedral architect. So the site was well known to us. Over time, the building and yard had fallen into disrepair and neglect. It was used primarily for storage purposes, with some of the upper rooms being used by the school. And the cathedral asked us to explore options for upgrading it to provide much needed community and education spaces. The project evolved in three parts. On the left, how we found it. On the right, how we've left it. The building itself, there on the left, with a new extension to the side, the stable yard, and a quite substantial project within the Dee's Garden, which was needed to provide a new access route from the cathedral to the north. On the building itself, we remodelled the spaces to provide a large space at ground floor with a series of music rooms, big and small, at first floor. By the time we squeezed in a part M staircase, there wasn't any room left for the toilets, so we added a new service block with a large timber canopy providing a covered entrance area. Earlier speakers have referred to this as acupuncture, so maybe we can use the same term here. We later decided to use the canopy for a range of PV panels. This is the elevation. I'll talk further about this, and in particular the arch. But you can see just a couple of points to pick out: the archway there, and up at the top right, louvers to the all kind of giving clues to the earlier function of the spaces within this little mews. But it wasn't totally clear how the original building had been organised. And on the subject of the arch, I'm just going to scroll back to, forgive me a moment. sorry, gone too far. Just top left. The original organisation wasn't really clear from the elevation as we found it. A steel beam over a garage door. Why wasn't there an arch? Blocked up louvers top right there in the building, where they ventilation to former hayloft, and 2 blocked up doorways, one of them particularly wide, which was suggestive of a former stable door. So these were the clues we had to pick up. Moving on. This little drawing from 1941 that was at the RCB, it all became clear really when we looked at this drawing, which shows some proposed alterations from 1941. So you can see the division of the building into 3 parts. The stable stalls clearly shown at the north end. That was great to see because no remnant of those left. The carriage house to the south. In the middle, the entrance into the groom's quarters and the little winding stairs up to a 2-roomed dwelling above. And you can see here that on the upper floor they were proposing to extend the dwelling into the former hayloft. And on the elevation, though not quite perfectly drawn, we do see the arch, that there was in fact originally an arch to that large opening. But not unlike the wedding photograph, this was the photograph that unlocked it for us. We were delighted to find this. It really helped us to understand the original arch. In fact, we kind of used it a lot, even just to gauge the rise of the arch. And looking in closely at it, I don't expect you to see it from here, but we could still see hinges to those early doors, which were still in place and still in use. So we stripped back the render. You can see that's the doors as we found them, and a steel. A brick-faced steel beam. But up above, when we stripped the render, you could see the blockwork infill above that steel beam, the original calp wall above, a lovely double reveal in break knobs to allow the gates to sit into it, lovely granite thrust blocks you can perhaps just read to right and left at the springing point of the arch. A small little course of calp that corresponded with, they allowed themselves a little 50mm course there to fit the hinge in. So now we had all the information that we needed to rebuild the segmental arch. Cora's drawings showing the sequence. Now this is nothing as complex or sophisticated as what Audrey and Shane have rebuilt in stone. But we were excited about this, and we still need to go through step by step. So this was Cora's sequencing proposal for propping the existing first floor, needling through the external wall to carry the load of the wall, putting in place a formwork for the arch, building the arch and its double reveal, the masonry up above it, keeping it all propped until the arch gained enough strength that the formwork could be removed. Our own drawings we refined to reflect the detail as we found it on site, and our mason worked out his bonding pattern there. A few quarter bricks having to come into it to get the double reveal. Some photos of the arch under construction. Setting out was critical. So a lot of careful work in getting that set up before we kicked off. But you can see the plywood former that provided the shape for the double reveal. You can see in the middle picture at the top the inner part of the arch built first, the inner lower part built first. And then the granite blocks you can see there and the hinge. And the remains of 3 courses of bricks that have been cut through for the steel beam. So really every little piece that was left there was relevant to us in understanding how to rebuild it. And presto, everything has settled and the support's taken away and there's the finish arch. And not as sophisticated as the big stone one, but really a great demonstration of craft skill. And Derek, who was our main mason on this, hadn't built an arch since he was in college. So there aren't that many opportunities to do these things, and it is that refreshing of skills and building up of skill that's really important. As a matter of interest, that arch was done as an enabling, ahead of the main project, because there was a grant, a BHIS grant that had to be spent before the main contract got started. So that's why you're seeing that piece of work just on its own. Sorry, I've gone to, yeah. So upgrade works for the rest of the building generally. It's from the now tried and tested playbook. Starting bottom right, we have a limecrete floor, diaphanite to the walls, sheep's wool insulation to the roof, and some bespoke steel hangers there where we've removed ceiling ties. Excuse me a moment. Fire upgrade of intermediate floor, and because we had music rooms, there was a high degree of acoustic separation as well. And then our little canopy and services block, which we built in lightweight timber. You can see PV panels on the roof of that. And there's the building in use just this week. On the right, some of the music rooms upstairs, the community room downstairs, which in this instance is hosting a community outreach workshop on drug abuse. It's also used for conferences and performances and multiple social events. So really the building is very heavily used, small building, heavily used, and the cathedral community wonder how they ever managed without these spaces. Just like to touch briefly on the decision to apply a lime finish to the building, which was considered controversial by some at the time. This is our record drawing recording the calp walls and the brick dressings. We also found small local remnants of a lime render. But rather than re-render, we wanted to use a lime slurry coat to provide a level of protection as well as to unify the facade, but still allowing the different materials and textures to be read. We tested, you see up there, we tested a few different samples, pure white and then some pigmented washes. We tested there bottom left, would we use one or a second coat? And we opted just to use a single coat. And of course they're well protected, being done in the height of summer, needed good protection. And that's it finished. And the doubters included were all very pleased with that result. Just going to talk about the yard now. There's how it was before and our early layout. So a few technical things we had to do. The deanery offices are located in the lower ground level of the deanery, so there were steps down to that and a failed outdoor lift, so we needed to provide universal access and put in some ramps to serve that. We proposed good accessible surface to create a good gathering space in the stable yard. Now we knew that there were some remnants of 19th century cobbles. We'd found them from some of our opening up work. And we hoped that we would have enough to create a margin of cobbles. You can see on the drawing there, just we thought we might get a little 1 metre margin of cobbles up against the Mews building. So on the left is an early sketch, including our little 1 metre strip. But on the right, you can see in the finished thing that we ended up with a lot more than a 1 metre strip of cobbles. And that's because when the tarmac macadam was stripped back, to everyone's delight, it revealed cobbles across almost the entire yard, albeit cut through by later services. There were substantial areas that were really quite intact. I mean, look at it closely, particularly up in the top right. You can see the irregular coursing running away from the building towards a cobbled drainage channel. So Lindsay Simpson was our archaeologist on this project, and she prepared the lovely drawing on the left. And we made a plan to lift the cobbles in sections so that they could be relayed as found. So they were, sorry, we've gone too far there. So they were lifted, cleaned, bagged, numbered, and we developed a methodology for relaying them. Now, they had been laid tightly together with the wider part of the cobble at the bottom. And Lindsay described this as shoulder to shoulder. And it was to that she attributed their great strength. So on the bottom left is the first attempt at relaying them. Unfortunately, the message got lost in translation and they were laid upside down. And then to the right of that is the second sample correctly and perfectly laid with the narrow part upwards, and here being laid in rough courses as the original. And the formwork, it just shows the process here, the formwork for the drainage channel, that was the first piece to be put in place because that would set the line and level for everything else. And here's the finished cobbled yard, a lot more than the 1 metre strip we had anticipated. So all the cobbles that we found were reused. We were able to keep the mortar often with cobbles in a modern setting. The mortar comes up high so that for accessibility purposes, but we didn't need to rely on this for accessibility because we were able to design to the other side of the yard an accessible area of paving using an Irish limestone pavier that we felt worked in scale and colour with the cobbles. And there we go, the finished yard. We think that the historic paving makes a huge impact on the quality of historic places, and I think the cobbles on this project, it may be the part of the project, apart from having all the wonderful new spaces, I think it's the part of the project that the cathedral is most proud of. Finally, we did have to do work through the garden because we needed to create a new route through to the cathedral in the north. You can see hidden there behind the trees was the existing gate, or there bottom right actually. So we needed to create an accessible route through the garden. So this was now going to be a semi-public route, and we still had to maintain the privacy of the private garden to the Dean's residence. These pleached limes were about 20 years old, and they'd been planted to provide privacy from the new school building that you can see just behind the wall, the west boundary there. So that was just our proposal for that. We found that by removing the corner trees, we were able to get just enough width to get our Part M route to run between the boundary wall and the trees, and that created a nice meandering longer route, helped ease out the substantial change in level that there was from the north gate to the south. We extended the line of the trees and planted bay hedging in behind it to provide greater privacy, and in turn that kind of created a better shape of a space, a separate garden area that will be used for events. So here is the path being set out and threaded through the trees, a specialist base system to provide protection for the existing routes. And up at the north gate, the excavation there, the existing gate in the wall, and then we found, of course, the foundations of the earlier buildings that had been there. So that was a reminder of just how much the ground levels had been raised over time. 2 minutes, lovely. Just finishing up, and there's the finished pathways and the new hedging. And that's just a view of the new enclosed garden and the Dean's garden beyond, still visible until the new planting will get established. Just to conclude, although this is a small and quite simple building, it was evident that the original builders took great care in its construction. I mean, everywhere, not only in the construction of that arch and the thrust stones, but everywhere through it, the carpentry, no fine joinery, but everything, the carpentry, everything was really carefully done. So I suppose understanding that really added to the joy of our craftsmen and our team, the joy that they got in adding their skills and knowledge to this 21st century renewal. Thank you.
I think we gained another minute there, so things are looking good. Do my best, Nikki. So I think what you see there really is as Fionnuala said, a 21st century renewal of a very simple building. But the key to it isn't just the really well-detailed modern interventions, but bringing back cobbles, bringing back the archway, bringing back the traditional finishes, provides a counterpoint which really helps the entire ensemble sing. We get to our last case study, which is going to be delivered by Michael Horan of AXO Architects, and it will be dealing with two different properties. Again, the types of buildings that are defining buildings within the Irish landscape. One, that both started life as country houses, Kylemore Abbey and Strokestown Park. Kylemore Abbey then became a celebrated religious institution, and now I think, as Michael will explain, is going to be has a new life as both a religious institution and a tourism destination. Strokestown Park also has tourism in it. So I'll hand over to Michael. Michael will tell us all about it in exactly 20 minutes.
Thank you very much. Being the last speaker, it's great to have 2 hours to myself. Yeah, I think so. So just to give us, I'm going to try and rattle through as quickly as we can. Michael, you might let me know when it's about 11 minutes or 12 minutes, and then I'm hopefully moving on then at that stage. So we're in Dublin. Strokestown is located roughly in the middle of the country, and Kylemore Abbey is in the west of the country in Connemara. So we'll start with Strokestown Park House, a project for the Irish Heritage Trust. And I think I see Anne O'Donoghue down there. You can see our design team, and I think I saw Kevin Blackwood earlier on, who worked with us on this project. So both projects have a very large element of tragedy to them, and it's the tragedy that gives them the uniqueness almost. And I'm going to try and explain a little bit about that because I think it's important. I'm going to skip a little bit, but it's a Palladian house, possibly by Richard Castles, but probably too early. We think that possibly there was a craft builder that just copied Richard Castles, and that Richard Castles came later and tidied it up, and then quite a number of years later, John Lynn did some further work, built the portico. So it was a little bit of a mismatch. The Mahon family have been involved, that shouldn't be the 13th century. The Mahon family have been involved pretty much since it's in the O'Connor Row Tower House and seat in Connacht. In 1845, Major Dennis Mahon inherited Strokestown Park House, which was in great debt. It also coincided with the start of the Great Famine in Ireland. And he had a holding where he had destitute, poor, ravaged families that could not pay their rent. And the solution to that was to put almost 1,500 of them on a coffin ship to America. So his bailiff, John Robinson, marched the 1,500 people from Strokestown to the Grand Canal dock in Dublin. That march is today the Famine Walk, the National Famine Walkway. From there, they were shipped to Liverpool. From Liverpool, they were shipped to Gros Isle in Canada. But on that journey, 50% of them died on the coffin ship. On Gros Isle, which was a quarantine island, some of them didn't get off that island, the one that survived the trip. Of the people that got off the island, they went to work, many of them, I believe, in Vancouver, and worked on the construction of a bridge in Vancouver. During construction, the bridge collapsed and killed quite a few of them. So it's unbelievable tragedy. Word of all of those deaths got back to Strokestown, and still in famine times, the locals got together and they put together the Clonahee petition. And I'll just read the line there. "We are not for joining in anything illegal or contrary to the laws of God or the land, unless pressed by hunger." Major Dennis Mahon didn't take any action, and he became the first landlord to be shot dead, executed by his tenants in Ireland. So that brings the tragic element to this story and brings a uniqueness to it. So let's look at Strokestown. It's a very much a crossroads town going from north-south to east-west. At the end of the east axis there, you'll see Strokestown Park House. And I've just outlined in pink that rectangle. That is a property owned by Westwood Holdings. And Jim Callery wanted for years and years and years to buy a little backyard or a little portion of the estate to extend his Scania dealership, his European Scania dealership, but could never buy it. But in 1991, he managed to buy it, and he was just going to flip it. He was going to keep what he wanted and flip it. But he decided one evening, I better go in and see what the hell I bought. He went upstairs and he found what eventually was 55,000 Famine documents, letters of begging and other artefacts. He hadn't the heart to sell it on, and to his great credit, he invested his personal money and opened up a very small Famine museum, which has developed today to become the National Famine Museum. So you can see the access. O'Connell Street in Dublin is regarded as the widest street in Ireland, possibly in Europe, but Bond Street in Strokestown is the second widest street in Ireland. You can see there's such a strong access right through the gate and right up to the front door. So looking at the work, it was a really diverse work when we were appointed to do this job, and I'll fly through it quickly. In the main house itself, mainly our work was life safety services, because when her name when Lady Mahan moved out of the house in 1991, the newspaper she was reading was left. Nothing had been taken out of the house. It's probably the best example in Ireland of a large house fully intact. It's incredible, and she couldn't afford to keep the house. The roof was leaking, so she kept decompressing, and finally she just lived in the living room. She slept there, she ate there, she didn't move into any other house. So all of the other bedrooms were left perfectly intact. It was an incredible find. In the stable block, and possibly some stable hand accommodation, we were asked to put in an events facility. In some of the farmyard buildings, we were asked to put in a National Famine Museum, which was funded by Fáilte Ireland. In the remainder of the farmyard buildings, there was a cafe and welfare facilities which needed to be fully upgraded. And then new interventions are shown in pink. So the main house in the services, I just want to show you, this is what we found. And our job was not to refurbish the house. So we didn't wash anything or clean anything. We just left it, and we very carefully worked around everything. But these were the toys that the children played with in the 1800s, metal bikes and very freaky looking dolls. The four-poster beds and the pots below it and all of the original drapery. It was just incredible find, so it was. Anyway, our work on life safety services, because we want to talk about interventions. So we identified all of the floorboards in the house that had previously been taken up. So we surveyed those and we said, okay, well, it's okay to lift those again because they've already been lifted before, but we don't want to lift up any new ones. So we use that as a mechanism to trace all our cables around the house. You can see that we had to put in life safety services, are fire alarms, emergency lighting, escape lighting. We have to do that if you want the public to be able to visit the building. So we painstakingly just routed as many cables as we could through existing cableways. Probably the most important thing that we did in the house was a version of heating. We believe it was the first of its kind in Ireland, but it's an English heritage model. It's a relative humidity heating system. So the existing house had storage heaters in it and had cableways to those storage heaters. But the storage heaters blasted out, just heat all of the time. And so nobody living in the house, so you didn't need to have it at 22 or 23 degrees. You just needed to prevent the artifacts and fittings and finishes, prevent decay. So relative humidity heating reacts to not temperature, but relative humidity. So in the summertime, it could be warm outside, but the relative humidity in the house could be high, so the heat would come on. And in the wintertime, it could be cold, but the relative humidity could be low, so there was no need for the heat to come on. So it only reacts to relative humidity, and it's relative humidity that will decay fabrics and wallpapers and tables and chairs and paintings and the like. We've already been through it, sash windows and resetting stones at all of that in the portico. So I won't go into that. The event stable, this was the existing condition. The prime horses and for the Mahon family were kept here, and you can see how they value the horses. You'll see in the second photograph that the horses caused an awful lot of damage to the base of the walls, but the lime render was intact on the upper walls. And then in an adjoining building, some offices had been fitted, and we noted that there was some really nice geodesic lime rendered arches on the ceilings. So we wanted to strip out the inappropriate fittings in there and bring it back to its original form. So we surveyed all of the walls, and we could determine how much of the lime render was still intact, and we could keep that. How much of the lime render was stained and it just needed a treatment, and the lime render that had been, boast or disappeared completely, so that we could map out how much new lime render we needed. So this is the stable building when it was finished. Because it's an events building, they needed a level floor for performance and for tables and chairs. So that was a challenge because you had cobbles in there. So what we did was we put a ventilation mat over the cobbles as a separation layer. And then on top of that, we put a limecrete floor. So the limecrete is not touching the cobbles. So effectively, we were just preserving the cobbles as a layer below ground without touching them. And that ventilation layer, that separation layer, it allowed the ground to breathe, and any damp air that would come up to the surface, it could travel to the edges. And you'll see on the photograph on the right that we put in a wainscoting system. And in that wainscoting system, we pulled that wainscoting system in from the external walls so that the damp air could rise up behind it and ventilate naturally. But that wainscoting system also carries containment for power, data, Wi-Fi, or broadband. So it means that the geodesic domes are free of services and conduits, and there was no need to touch the existing lime. So there is a way of servicing these buildings without impacting the authentic beauty and special character. The best of the cobblestones, we tried to, we showed that they're there, and they're there forever, so it's fully reversible, the floor. The limecrete is broken up into very small sections, through expansion joints, so we can lift the floor easily in the future if we want to. And that's the ante-room that I showed in the first photograph. So the farmyards, these farmyard buildings were built with blockwork because back 40 years ago, they had crumbled and they were rebuilt, a lot of them with blockwork at the time. So there was nothing special in them, but it's still a resource. And the theme of today is that the greenest building is an existing building. So instead of knocking them or modifying them too much, we just reuse them for the new national famine. So
you're at the 11-minute mark.
Okay. So this is how we fitted out the museum to tell the story of the Great Famine. I'm not sure if that's the gun that was used or not, but it's there. The existing restaurant and cafe were in very poor condition, no universal access. Timber stairs arriving down into the middle of the floor, no proper fire escape, and really poor fare generally. So this was our intervention, and this is the middle photograph is the walkway into the new visitor centre, and on to the left-hand side we're going down into one of the range buildings where we have welfare facilities, and then the new restaurant. We pulled the new restaurant away from the heritage buildings and brought light down between the two, so that it's very legible what's existing and what's new. And there's a kind of a nice threshold when you walk through that archway, that you feel as if you've left one building and walking into something else, and the reverse is also true. So our new interventions, that was the car park side of the building when we first got it. This was effectively what you saw when you drove into the estate. That was the National Famine Memorial. We felt that there was no proper sense of visitor flow or self-orientation, and it was quite confusing to find anything. And the courtyards weren't anything special. So I'll take you through just a few of the photographs of our finished product. We inserted this metal sort of slice that visually appears as if it's pushed into the stone wall, and that's the portal that brings you into our new building. And it's located beside the memorial of the 1,490 names that were on that coffin ship. It's conceived as a thin metal slice going through the wall. This is just inside the portal, taking you into the visitor centre. The visitor centre then, or the reception or orientation point, the large groups gather here and they're told about what the tour is going to be involved in, which directions are going to go, and it's kind of in the centre of everything. We had this window at the back, which you can see the woodland to the back. And we thought it was nice that when you walk into a space, it's one of my pet hates, that when you walk into a space that you never see the outside again. It's nice to see the external air and get a sense of orientation where the sun is. All of those doors pivot and they open into a courtyard for evening concerts and activities. The building itself is conceived as a very small object in the courtyard, and it's coloured to make it appear earthy and natural. The building itself is pulled in from all of the courtyard buildings, so the only thing that cuts through the courtyard building is just that entrance shardway, which means that all of the gutters and all of the slate roofs can run through and that not clashing against our new building. So our new building has the minimum impact on the heritage buildings. That's it from the rear, from the car park as people approach, and that's it as people are just enjoying the sunshine at the back of the cafe. So, Kylemore Abbey. Again, it is steeped in tragedy. In 1847, Mitchell Henry and his wife came on honeymoon to Kylemore and stayed in Kylemore Lodge, which was a fishing lodge. They fell in love with the place so much that he came back and he bought the lodge and thousands and thousands of acres in Kylemore Valley, and he built Kylemore Castle at the time. They moved there full time, had their family, became a local councillor in Galway County Council, built the Victorian Wall Gardens, brought all of the local farmers in and trained them how to get the best yields out of their farm. A number of years later, they went on a trip to Egypt, and Margaret contracted malaria and passed away, and he was heartbroken. He built the Gothic church as a memorial church to her, and it's a 1/4 replica of Norwich Cathedral. All of these incredible buildings are within this estate, and we're fortunate to work on them. So just looking at Kylemore itself, the Abbey is circled there on the edge of Pollacoppel Lake. Behind the lake on the north side, you have this very steep Duck Rock Mountain, which gives it its incredible, because it's a valley, it gives it that incredible sort of presence in the landscape. When Mitchell Henry bought the property, the road from Westport to Clifton was on the north side of the lake, but he wanted exclusive rights. So he was powerful enough at the time to be able to use the pinch point in the lake to change the public road from the north side to the south side and giving him exclusivity. That's the entrance as we know today. But it changed the perception of the estate because a lot of the gate lodges were now reversed, which is unusual in itself. Anyway, the First World War came about, and a group of Irish nuns living in Belgium were warned that Hitler was about to bomb their monastery that night or the following morning, and that they should vacate their monastery. So they packed everything up and they fled to England. From England, they went to Wexford, and when in Wexford, they found out that a castle in Kylemore was up for auction, and they might be interested in buying it. So they bought it and they moved everything to Kylemore, and that's how the Irish nuns came. This was their monastery in Apree. They opened up a girls' school there and ran it until 2010. In 2010, it closed because of redress cases and the publicity that came with that. So, in 1959, a fire broke out, primarily to the rear left-hand side of the Abbey, and it destroyed a huge portion of the Abbey. So the nuns who lived in the Abbey had to move out, and this was purpose-built in 1959, their living quarters, St. Joseph's unit, was built to the right-hand side of the Abbey, and they vacated. So our works in the Abbey. Significant works are shown here. This was mainly where the fire had broken out. Life safety services and dressings shown in green, and then some new interventions shown pink. It's not going to take us long to finish this one, Michael, so we're not too far away from the end. Before the works, this is just an aerial photograph, and you can see the amount of tar macadam at the front, and the cars parked at the front. They used the front of the Abbey as a car park, and lorries and delivery vans and waste and everything could drive up there. There was no hierarchy. Macadam was everywhere. This was the walkway up to the Abbey. This was the forecourt of the Abbey. There was this rear gate into what was a rear stable yard, which was kind of locked away, and there was a utility washing machines and tumble dryers in behind it. And there was just a sea of tar macadam on front. And you can notice here on the left-hand side, people sitting on a wall, which is only about 450 mil high, and there's a drop, I think, of 5 metres the other side of the wall. But to try and find a solution to that, do you put up railings to stop that happening? It's a challenge. And then no universal access. So there are 3 steps. There was almost 600 millimetres of a rise from the tar macadam. How can you solve the universal access? This was at the main front door. At the back, the yard, that yard had been infilled with the flat roof, and you can see those 3 folly windows in the back retaining wall that had been cut. The services that were clipped to the wall, it was just horrific. The room was used as a utility room and a kind of a cloakroom. You can see the washing machine and tumble dryer there, the base of the 2 folly windows. And then they broke out windows as they wanted to in the back wall of the Abbey, and we reversed those windows. Coming in through the front door, the oak flooring, 500,000 people every year, mostly in wet weather, bringing grit and dirt and wet through that door. It was just wrecking all of the heritage flooring. In some of the main rooms themselves, some of the balconies were leaking and ceilings had fallen down. Fire escape stairs just landing down everywhere. The kitchens at the back, this was where the fire had occurred, so there was no authentic fabric whatsoever left at the back of the building. So that meant that we knew then that we could use that back left-hand side to put all of our storytelling and interpretation, because we didn't have to impact on the heritage value of the building at all. So that's the setting of Kylemore Abbey today. We put in some new resin-bound aggregate leading up to the Abbey, which is a natural aggregate mixed with resin, and it gives you a solid surface so that wheelchairs and universal access and buggies and all of any sort of assisted mobility is very, very safe. We used thin metal curbing set away from the Abbey, because this paving is now 600 mil higher than it had been, but we needed to keep it away from the Abbey wall so that the plinth stones weren't impacted in any way. So that's the setting of the Abbey as it is today, which I know we spoke earlier about landscape and amenity being part of good architecture. So there's a photograph here of the threshold. So what we did was we made a metal tray, which is effectively just like a metal shower tray, and we gently left it down from the threshold to our new paving. And into that metal tray, we put new resin. So you now have, it's like a bridge just crossing the stones. But if you lift that tray up, the threshold stones that you saw in the original photograph are there, so it's fully reversible. And we tried to set the paving up in such a way that it directed people in to the left-hand side. So we changed the visitor route. You no longer go through the front door, you now go through the side door. So you now enter in through this side arched rear court. We conceived a new sort of translucent gate and some signage, and we put some interpretation on the 3 folly windows. We put a floating canopy so that if one 50-seater bus was inside the building and another 50-seater bus was standing outside waiting to get in, that they're under cover and they're not getting wet, and it marks the rear court. This is just inside, so this had been the kitchen, so this is where we start our interpretation. Perfect. And telling the story and all of the layers of history in Kylemore through AV. On this photograph, on the left-hand side, you'll see a new glass automatic door, sliding door. So there's glass up above. the amount of energy that leaves the building, because the front door has to be left open all of the time. So the amount of energy that's just wasted out through the front door, it gets sucked out into the valley. So we put a glass automatic sliding door at the bottom, glass fan light up above, and then we had to put in a steel beam, and which would carry the gear for the sliding door. But we clad the steel beam with mirror, so that the mirror takes on the imagery of the oak panelling, so that it becomes almost invisible in the room. Mostly in these rooms, it was life safety services and some dressings, but just days upon days upon days trying to route cables for emergency lighting, fire alarms, escape lighting, so that they would be subtle and it wouldn't damage any authentic fabric, but that they were still compliant. And because we reversed the route, you enter through the back, you experience the building in a very natural way, and then you exit through the front door with dry shoes, and that's what you exit to, that Kylemore Valley. And that's it. That's my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We made it. And if we did go a minute or two over, I think you'll all agree it was a minute or two well spent. So I'm going to call on Charlotte Sheridan now to deliver the closing remarks for today. Charlotte is a former president of the RIAI and chairperson of the Architecture and Planning Committee in the Irish Georgian Society, and I have no idea, because it doesn't say it on the timetable, how much time she's going to take, but it's her gig, so over to you.
Thanks very much, Michael. And I'm already half an hour late, so even though we did catch up. So I'll just gather my thoughts here now. I mean, what a difficult conference to sum up, and I won't actually even attempt to elaborate too much. I suppose it's been absolutely fantastic. I just think it's been such an inspiring, rich and energising day. It's been so engaging. It's really been brilliant. I'm so full of ideas, as I'm sure all of you are, and I can only just say I want to extend my sincere thanks to all of our speakers, panellists, organisers, and to every participant for your engagement throughout the conference. Everybody has given 100%, really absolutely excellent. I think that today has been a great demonstration of just how far Ireland have got and Europe have come in developing the concept of the shared culture of adaptation and reuse. I think we show a great level of maturity at this point, and it is becoming very much embedded in the way that we work. We've certainly identified a lot of challenges over the day, but it also presents enormous opportunities, I think, in terms of what our future holds and what we can do. Across our sessions, we've seen clearly that working closely excuse me, with the EU architecture policy in particular, strengthened by the new European Bauhaus too, the values that are integrated as part of that, beauty, sustainability, inclusion. It gives us great structure to work with, but also a great means of inspiration and ambition that we can hold then to bring those practical tools to play in delivering really good, high quality outcomes. And perhaps this forms the basis of the change in mindset. The change in mindset that we talked about that might be necessary within the different leadership areas that we've talked about before. And today's programme, I know, Nikki, you have done phenomenal work on this, really integrating the framework for today and integrating it with the national policy and architecture place for people. The two things, it's really elaborated on all of the elements that are part of the national policy and architecture and really brings it to life. I think it's been really fantastic. And I know that was very much intentional on your part, but it's a really great curation of projects that really demonstrate all of that for us. And when Colm or Kieran O'Boyle spoke earlier about the matrix of policies, I would put forward that perhaps at the very top of the hierarchy, not wishing to add another, but let's at the top of the hierarchy, it absolutely has to be about places for people, because that in itself then would surely inform how it is and what approach it is that we might take in delivering projects, and that should really be part and parcel of it. And I suppose we're in a very great position of having national policy in architecture, all government support, and it's something that is really a great thing that we can work with and we can continue to develop. I suppose I won't try to. I went through trying to think about, okay, well, how many different sections I can talk about. But I mean, really, I just don't know. So a couple of headings. I had 5, but they break down. But leadership absolutely has to be the key thing on it. And we spoke, the Olaf, I think, from at the beginning, talked about the need for proactive and not reactive approach. And that's very much part and parcel of what it is that we need within our leadership organisations. Not just the public sector, but also we do need leadership, and we've seen it to a large extent among the private sector too, the value that there is in bringing about good quality, high quality architecture, but reuse and adaptation. But it has to be that, and it has to be integrated as part of that change in the mindset, but also that need to support collaboration, interdisciplinary approach, and that's all of those things that Julia spoke about as well in her presentation too. It needs to be embedded in the organisations, and that we get that cross-fertilisation within the organisations. I think we see it working very well in Dún Laoghaire as well, but also in Waterford, the wonderful presentations that we saw from there. But we do need the support for the local authorities in that regard. The second theme then, and this really combination of culture and quality, and the two are absolutely interlinked, and that came through very much. And I suppose that discussion about how do we define quality, and the ways in which we might try to do that. But what's absolutely certain is that it all has to be place-centred, authentic, and there really needs to be a very good understanding of the place to inform design considerations. And our contributor earlier from the New European Bauhaus just saying about quality, it's not just a luxury, and it absolutely isn't. This is not something that's nice to have. It's something that's should be an expectation for everyone and living and working in the built environment. And then heritage, community and resilience, and this has come through consistently throughout each of the projects, the value and the benefit that we hear about what heritage can bring, particularly the last speakers, I think, in terms of how it can really empower communities, this good quality, this approach, building capacity among communities, their confidence and their resilience, and the tangible examples that we see, particularly in Strokestown, Kylemore Abbey, the Magazine Fort, the Dublin Civic Trust we heard earlier as well. All of these projects demonstrate how conservation and adaptive reuse can really strengthen civic pride, creating learning opportunities and supporting community-led stewardship of places, and really bringing vitality to places and providing inspiration. What wonderful places to live, really great places for people to live. Budget was the other thing that we talked about, bridging the gap. How can we address that? And Thrive is a fantastic vehicle for funding, and just so well written as well that it really picks up on those key themes of applying quality from the outset. It's really rigorous in terms of ensuring that there's continuous assessment, so that often in the past we might have seen funding would go somewhere, but the translation, something would get lost in translation so easily, and it seems like a terrible waste. But I think the Thrive is really ambitious in this regard. And now we're seeing the tangible effects of delivering exemplars that can communicate possible uses for communities and the value that that can bring. But what it does point to as well is how strategic investment itself, local vision and EU alignment can really transform underused heritage into living assets for communities, and that is a fantastic thing. And when you think about cost, I always feel, and I know it did come through today as well, doing that cost-benefit analysis, that you need to look to the longer term. It's not just the delivery in the short term, but also, is there a value being placed, and is there a metric that we can use for quality of life and quality of place? Shane, you're so passionate about skills, and I was thinking, because I was on the panel discussion before the event, and And it was coming through so much the value of traditional skills. None of this is possible without the skill set. It's the whole gambit of everybody who's involved, but really actually the getting down and doing is so important. And I suppose we've had a huge loss in apprenticeships and craftsmanship and training, and just to see a way where this can all be self-fulfilling and we can retrain people and really develop this understanding again. And that comes down to that idea of knowledge sharing, again going back to the national policy and architecture, but also the importance of that and the importance of an event like this. And for us, and we never want to be just talking to ourselves, we want to expand and reach out to the wider audience, and that's really important that we do that through collaborations such as this, but then in our networking and in all of those community engagements that we have with the public, that many of you talked about as well. Boosting public participation is absolutely critical, and engagement where communities have a real meaningful role to play in creating their environments. So then this brings me around, then I actually have to go to my phone now, because I understand this is hot off the press. and it's really good. I'm really excited about the idea of it. I suppose what I was going to talk about was, how do we capture what has happened today so that it doesn't just go. And so there's a proposal that as part of the this conference is part of the EU presidency in Ireland, and it presents a really unique moment for built heritage stakeholders to reflect on the opportunity of a shared culture of adaptation and reuse, and to consider the Dublin Declaration. We heard of other declarations earlier on today, but this is the Dublin Declaration. And that being an appropriate legacy to this conference, a call to action on the theme of new life for historic buildings and places through a shared culture of adaptation and reuse. And so for this reason, there are three elements to consider and that are being put forward. Firstly, the Dublin Declaration, building on the conference outcome and EU policy momentum, will reference the 7 guiding principles of the 2024 Krakow Declaration by ACE, Europa Nostra and ICOMOS as the basis for future discussion on this theme, namely prioritising renovation and reuse, combining innovation with traditional knowledge, upskilling professionals, co-creation with communities, championing quality in governance and funding, shared knowledge, and preparing built heritage for future risks. Secondly, then, that the Dublin Declaration proposes working with the New European Bauhaus concept and the working model of New European Bauhaus local chapter with the purpose of strengthening European Bauhaus community members and wider stakeholder collaboration, sharing knowledge and good practice, and developing a culture of adaptation and reuse of built heritage assets grounded in the New European Bauhaus value of beautiful, sustainable, and together. And then thirdly, a Dublin Declaration proposes working and reporting back within the EU presidency programme on the theme New Life for Historic Buildings and Places through a shared culture of adaptation and reuse. I just think this is a great initiative, and I'd be very hopeful for it, and we can really positively look to the future, which is a great way to finish a conference. I think that there's more momentum from this. So also, Nikki, you mentioned as well the looking ahead, the EU presidency value for many, and that's all part of this, which will be led by the state and principal architect, Conor Sreenan, and that'll be taking place between the 19th and the 21st of November. And that there'll be details on that across the usual channels. But just to close, I really want to thank a few people in particular. Very warm thanks. Firstly, to Jeremy O'Sullivan of the European Parliament Liaison Office, Joan Flanagan of the European Commission Representation in Ireland, Conor Sreenan as well from the OPW, and Conor, of course, couldn't be with us today, and we extended our condolences to him, but huge support from the OPW and representation from the OPW as well. Fantastic projects that are happening there. And of course, Nikki Matthews, what a fantastic job you have done, Nikki. You really fantastic work to get us to where we are today on this, and all of the work that you do. in the National Built Heritage Services. Dr. Sandra O'Connell as well. I know, Sandra, you have been part of this process too. And of course, our own team in the Irish Georgian Society. Emmeline, you're just terrific as well in terms of keeping us all organised. And Donna Cahill, of course, and the team. So thank you all. I think I will finish off there. Thank you again to all of our speakers again for your generosity and expertise, and thank you to everyone here for your commitment. I know everyone in this room has a very key part of the culture of adaptation, reuse and care for the places that shape our collective future, and thank you all for that. So I hope we continue our conversations over refreshments, which are being provided by the EU House again. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this day with you all, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.